Alright, man, peace. You know, brother, just sitting back thinking about it, of all of the myriad forms of artistic expression, the one that has to be the most frustrating must, without a doubt, be athletics. Because it's really the only manifestation of art that we use with our bodies, directly with our bodies, and not necessarily primarily with our minds. And therefore, due to the fact that our bodies deteriorate over time, we have a timestamp placed on it, a limit placed on it. You can be an architect, a painter, a photographer, a designer, an engineer, and you can pretty much do that almost until the end of your life if that's what you want to do, if that's what you want to be, to express yourself, to make tangible the ideas, the thoughts that you have in your mind. But when you're an athlete, you're told after the age of 35, hey, you might want to think about hanging it up. And for the most part, 99.999% of people in the world will never truly understand what it means to be the best in your field of endeavor, like that standout athlete has known. That's why people like Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson all had such a problem letting go. They were the best in the world at what they did, and very few people will ever truly be able to understand that. That's why we love award shows, right? Because for one moment in time, at least hypothetically, the person who wins the award is recognized as the best performer within their field of endeavor in the world. Even amongst actors, they have a hard time letting go. You have people out here who are still acting at 80 years old. Morgan Freeman, Clint Eastwood, still acting at 80 plus years old. They can't act, they can't perform like how they used to, but they still want to keep it going because that's what they love. So when I see a Floyd Mayweather want to get into the ring and box exhibitions, I see nothing wrong with it. And I did watch his performance against Logan Paul on June 6th of 2021. Of course, I'll be assessing his performance, that ritual, esoterically on my main channel. But just for the sake of the two-dimensional breakdown, I thought that Floyd looked very good for a 44-year-old man in the ring against a performer, a real fighter like Logan Paul. People might say, what are you talking about, a real fighter? Yes, a real fighter. A young man who trained his ass off, was ripped, 200 pounds, 6'2", extremely strong. Technique was not that great, but he is a professional. He's had a professional fight. He has been boxing for around 3 to 5 years now. So that's what he does. And Floyd got into the ring with someone who was way bigger than him. Probably had power somewhere in the same ballpark with Floyd, but his technique was totally off. So he would not be able to execute that power like a Floyd Mayweather. And Floyd pretty much beat the shit out of him from rounds 2 to around round 6, and then took his foot off the gas in round 7 and 8 for whatever reason. Who knows? Maybe just self-preservation and understanding that he made his point. But as usual, especially when it comes to Floyd Mayweather, genius is not recognized until long after the fact. So Floyd is someone who will not truly be understood for his brilliance both in and out of the ring, maybe until he's passed away. Who the hell knows? If this world is still around by the time Floyd Mayweather has passed on, that will probably be the time when people say, wow, you know, that dude was a trailblazer. He introduced fully random blood and urine testing for PEDs into the sport of boxing. He helped fighters understand that they can be their own boss and make the bulk of the money. He stopped allowing the networks and the promotional companies to rape the fighters. And we never gave him his credit while he was alive. Why is that? Maybe because he was a so-called black man. Who knows? Either way, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Mayweather and Logan Paul fight ended up going the distance, all 8 rounds.
And let me say this. Floyd Mayweather walked into the ring with that Moneybagg Yo song playing. That is my jam, man. That is my anthem. I don't like niggas. I don't like bitches. I don't like nobody. But all seriousness aside, I thought that Floyd and Logan, they put on a very interesting performance. It was very fun to watch. And once again, I'll be addressing it far deeper in my esoteric breakdown. But as we can see, Floyd Mayweather played the Green Man, and Logan Paul, he played Horus or Heru. He played the son of the Green Man. He was Harpocrates, the god of mischief. That's why he rocked the black and yellow or the black and gold. You understand? The bringing together of Saturn and the sun, with Floyd Mayweather as the quote-unquote Green Man, Asar or Osiris, the divine bull. Very similar to the same ritual that was played out in the death of George Floyd at the hands of Derek Chauvin. You understand? With Derek Chauvin playing the role of Mithras, and George Floyd was the divine lunar bull. That is who Floyd Mayweather played in this contest, and of course, the bringing together of opposites. But once again, I'll be expounding upon that on my main channel.
Fighter. Paul is 6 inches taller and 35 pounds heavier, but the more experienced Mayweather was still able to land 15 more punches. And after the exhibition, Floyd said it just felt good to still move around and that Logan Paul was, quote, better than I thought he was. So Shannon, should Floyd be embarrassed? He didn't knock Logan Paul down or out.
No, Skip, look, Floyd has made a career, made his living on not taking unnecessary risks. And he wasn't going to walk.
There's no way in the world that you can make a career on quote-unquote unnecessary risk and be a professional prize fighter. That's not possible, and have defeated more world champions than any fighter in history. If we were to compare Floyd Mayweather's resume to any other fighter in history, if you understand boxing, you'll know that Floyd Mayweather has, at the very worst, a top 5 resume in the history of boxing when it comes to the fighters that he got in the ring against. When they talk about the 4 kings, the only fighters of the 4 kings who one can compare to Floyd Mayweather when it comes to the level of competition that he faced consistently is Tommy Hearns and maybe Marvin Hagler. Roberto Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard had so many tune-up fights because they were consistently falling from grace and then having to resurrect themselves. They had numerous tune-up fights. Floyd Mayweather's tune-up fights were against fighters who were champions in other weight classes, like a Juan Manuel Marquez. That's considered a tune-up fight for Floyd Mayweather. Another tune-up fight for Floyd is someone like an Andre Berto, a fighter who was a title holder at welterweight on the comeback trail. Those are his tune-up fights. When you look at someone like a Muhammad Ali, he's facing fighters like a Jurgen Blin, or a Richard Dunn, or a Jean-Pierre Koopman, or a Chuck Wepner. Bum fighters who, if Floyd Mayweather ever fixed his lips to say, I'm going to fight these guys, he'd be laughed out of boxing. He's been held to the highest standard of any champion in the history of modern boxing. Once again, just look up Sugar Ray Robinson's his resume on BoxRec, and you'll see how many of the same fighters he was allowed to fight over and over again. He could knock out a bum and then fight that same guy 2 weeks later. And by no means am I saying that Ray Robinson was not an all-time great. He was. It's just that they were allowed to do things in a different way back during his time period, which elevated and amplified his resume and made it seem a bit greater than it was. People love saying things like, at one time he was 121 wins and 2 losses and 1 draw and all this other shit. Of course, because he could fight the same cab drivers. Imagine if Floyd Mayweather could beat the shit out of Arturo Gatti and then a month and a half later say, I'm going to fight Arturo Gatti again. That basically is what was going on back in the 1940s and 50s with the elite level fighters, especially if they were connected. They were allowed to fight the same bums over and over again because a lot of the guys who they were fighting were mob connected. So someone like a Ray Robinson, if he's fighting a Carl Bobo Olsen 4 or 5 times, it's because Olsen was connected to the mafia. And the mob wanted to make sure that their guy got all of the opportunities at the championship belt. In this day and age, the talent pool is larger than it's ever been before. Floyd Mayweather's skill set is the highest of any fighter that I've ever seen on both offense and defense. And the stats play that out. So once again, before we speak about his performance against a Logan Paul, please have the overall boxing IQ to recognize what you're looking at, because most people don't understand what they're watching when they see someone like a Floyd Mayweather and what he does in the ring, where he can nullify everything that his opponent does, and his opponent can never truly nullify what Floyd Mayweather does on offense.
Pounds heavier than Floyd at the fight. Skip, he's so much bigger. And Floyd is, what, 44 years of age. And the hand speed and the precision is not there anymore.
Not true, sir. Once again, you already stated Logan Paul is 6'2", had a longer reach, and he was very awkward. So no, Floyd is not going to be able to time a Logan Paul or be able to connect on him with anywhere near the level of proficiency as he would someone who was his approximate fight dimensions. But the fact that he was able to land hard shots, especially with the lead left hook, with the counter right uppercut. Shows you that for the most part his timing was there. Now, was it as sharp as it was 10 years ago? Of course not. One would not expect that. He wasn't training to fight a Canelo Alvarez or a Miguel Cotto. He was training to fight Logan Paul. So he trained hard for a regular person, but not for Floyd Mayweather. We have to understand exactly, what are the parameters of our judgment here of Floyd's performance. It was an exhibition match. Go back and watch Muhammad Ali's exhibition match against Lyle Alzado, and then compare how Ali looked in that exhibition match to how he looked against Cleveland Williams, and then come back to me.
Look, Floyd's like, if I could pick up a quick $20-30 million, however much he made, Skip, it was more than, had he not taken the fight, he could have made. He's like, I'm not taking any risk. Paul did land a few good shots on Floyd. He hit him with a couple of shots. I don't think it hurt Floyd, but he did land a couple of shots. But the thing is, Skip, you heard his corner. That's the greatest fight of all time. And you laughed with him. Skip, it was just about him getting...
He was supposed to last. The dude has been training for about 2 years now. He outweighed Floyd by 50 pounds. And he was an experienced fighter. Is he anywhere near in the class of Floyd? Of course not, but he was supposed to last. Once again, the theme was Apollo Creed, a.k.a. Floyd Mayweather, against Rocky Balboa, a.k.a. Logan Paul. That's why he came into the ring with the black and gold on, trying to conjure up the imagery and the energies of the Italian stallion, a.k.a. Heru. Apollo Creed representing Apollo, the quote-unquote god of the sun, the god of sports, against Rocky Balboa, the quote-unquote Baitulos, or the missing stone, aka the sin-bearing stone that takes on the entire infractions of all the peoples on the planet Earth. They both played Horus or Heru. As we saw here, Floyd Mayweather played the Green Man. Logan Paul, he plays the reincarnated version, the updated version. He's Floyd's replacement in the quote-unquote fight game, esoterically speaking, of course. Not literally speaking, but just esoterically speaking. They have big plans for these two Disney programmed assets.
What about him beating Floyd? He just wanted to finish to say a YouTuber. I do jokes, I eat Legos, I step on your, I jump out of plane, I do all this crazy stuff. And I went 8 rounds with Floyd Mayweather. I've done something that a lot of boxers can't say they did, and they're trained in this. And I did it. So for me, Skip,
great counter right uppercut there by Floyd.
Floyd, you done made enough money.
No such thing as enough money, Shannon Sharp. Stop hating, brother. Let the man do what he loves to do. Apollo Creed told this to Rocky in Rocky IV. He said, if the warrior could not find any wars to participate in, of course I'm paraphrasing, if the warrior could not find any battles or wars to participate in, then the warrior might as well be dead. Those were the words of Apollo Creed before he entered the ring to be sacrificed at the altar of the great dragon or the great serpent, aka Ivan Drago. Same thing with Floyd Mayweather, Roy Jones, Muhammad Ali, etc. You're going to have to beat the shit out of those guys to make them believe that they're no longer elite at what they do. Michael Jordan needed that time period or that tenure with the Wizards to bring closure to his own basketball life. Because athletes have multiple lives. They have their athletic life, and then they have their actual lives. So they expire multiple times.
Damn near every fight you ever fought on pay-per-view. The ones I didn't attend in person, I watched on pay-per-view. Floyd, let this go now. Floyd wasn't in shape to fight. Now he wasn't in shape.
Floyd was in fine shape. Was he in the condition that he was in when he fought Arturo Gatti or Oscar De La Hoya or Ricky Hatton? Absolutely not. But was he in great shape for this fight at 44 years old? Yes, he was.
155. Floyd's only going to walk around at 155. That's why he can fight his whole career at 147.
Yep.
Skip, all these taking you go to camp for 8 weeks, you're going to drop 8 pounds easy. So that's why he was never tasked to like, oh man, he barely made weight. Because he's a naturally small man. He's a naturally 50-poundish man. He only fought.
Well, I would agree with that for the most part, but I do think that Floyd had allowed himself to get a bit bigger in that time period from when he last fought against Conor McGregor up until now. I would say that he's probably blown up, or he had probably blown up to somewhere around, and of course for him, blowing up would be somewhere around 168. So it took him a concerted training program and fight camp to probably get down to around 154, 155, whatever he weighed in at. So I would say he probably lost anywhere from 13 to maybe 18 pounds in preparation for this fight against Logan Paul.
He didn't even make that. He fought it like 150. So for me, it wasn't entertaining. It was just a bunch of hugging and holding on.
Well, who you going to blame for that, Shannon Sharp? You can't get mad at Floyd. He wasn't doing any of the holding. The cat weighed about 150, 155 pounds, and he was walking this dude down for the majority of the fight. You have to blame Logan Paul. He couldn't deal with that power that he was getting hit with. That's what it was. Once again, people who think that Floyd Mayweather can't punch, good luck with that. You don't get into fights with Miguel Cotto and Oscar De La Hoya and Saul Canelo Alvarez and these different fighters and be able to stand your ground in the ring and let you not throwing something hellified back.
Risk to put himself in harm's way the way he would need to knock Jake Paul out. I think Jake or Logan. Logan Paul.
He's lucky it wasn't Jake Paul, or he might have been in trouble.
Yeah.
Oh, please. I would love to see Floyd Mayweather fight Jake Paul, and I promise you, he'd be in even better condition for Jake Paul than he was for Logan Paul, and that would be a great fight, because I don't see Jake trying to hold against Floyd Mayweather. I see Jake being stupid enough to try to exchange with him, and then we get some damn fireworks.
Whole thing.
Yeah.
But Skip, Logan Paul was so much bigger than Floyd. Floyd has never fought a man that much bigger than he is. So now all of a sudden you got to punch up instead of just punch, even, kill. But
Shannon Sharp, I promise you that Floyd Mayweather has fought many fighters with the same dimensions as Logan Paul, just in sparring over the course of his life. Even Floyd Mayweather brought up the fact that he fought a fighter by the name of Tony Pep, and I remember when he fought Tony Pep. That was the fight before his first title opportunity against Gennaro Chicanito Hernandez. And he beat the shit out of this dude, Tony Pep, who was around 6'1", 6'2", who was a junior lightweight. He was only around 129, 130 pounds. But, you know, for the sake of the conversation, he was 6'1 and a half, 6'2", with very long arms. And Floyd nullified that with ease. But this was prime Floyd Mayweather at around 130 pounds, lightning fast, hard punching, unbelievable reflexes, feet looking like, you know, motherfucking Hermes, like he had wings on his feet. Like, he was just incredible in that fight. And then, of course, the next fight against Gennaro Hernandez, I thought was arguably, if not the best performance of his career, the most underrated and neglected performance of his career. Everyone talks about Diego Chico Corrales and Arturo Gatti and a lot of these other top-notch performances, impressive performances over the course of his career. But for my money, overall, Floyd's best performance was either against Saul Canelo Alvarez or against Gennaro Chicanito Hernandez, because he was able to nullify great boxers on both of those nights and totally embarrassed them.
because I thought I would, even if he didn't knock him out, I thought he'd get a lot more shots than what he did on him. But I thought the kid did pretty well for himself.
He did pretty well for himself.
He did okay because he survived. Once again, this was a Rocky storyline.
Did not count on Floyd's record, obviously. It's 50-0.
Yeah.
It tarnished Floyd's legacy in my mind. Because
Once again, Skip Bayless, no one cares about how you view Floyd Mayweather's legacy in your mind, because you spent the last 10 years hating on Floyd Mayweather, and everybody knows that. Once again, 15 years after Floyd Mayweather is gone, if Skip Bayless's old ass is still alive, that is when he will start to give Floyd more credit for his greatness in the ring.
thinking it was going to be a joke.
Right.
I think most people thought it was going to be Ringling Brothers in the ring, right? Just a circus. And even in the pre-fight interview that they did on Showtime, Floyd admitted, he said, I'm retired from boxing, but I'm not retired from entertaining.
Right.
And he said, I'm paraphrasing how he said it, but he said, I'm trying to decide, should I just knock him out early or should I let it last for a while?
Right.
Because that's what he thought was about to happen. That did not happen.
Right.
In fact, Floyd tried to just peekaboo him for the first 2 rounds, just sort of feel him out. In the second round, he resorted to some Ali rope-a-dope,
Yeah,
trying
he
to
tried to
wear
tire
him
him
out,
out. Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then in the third round,
But I don't think he was just trying to tire Logan Paul out. I think also he wanted to feel his power. He wanted to know exactly what he was going to have to deal with over the course of the fight, because depending on the level of power that he was feeling from Logan Paul, that was going to determine his fight plan, because Floyd goes into the ring with limitless fight plans. And if he thinks that you can't hurt him, then of course he's going to put the pedal to the metal and try to walk you down. If he sees that you can possibly hurt him, then he might try to come forward, but with caution, like he did against Marcos Maidana. Now, if he sees that you can hurt him and you also have tremendous speed and you're coming at him from angles that he can't see, now he's going to have to figure out something else. He's going to have to attack you at range. Hopefully he has longer arms than yours. That's why he took that tact against Manny Pacquiao. And that's why Floyd has always said, after he was in the ring with Pacquiao for 12 rounds, he can see why Pacquiao was able to win so many championships. Because once again, I don't care what anybody says, that little dude is a serious problem. That dude is a monster, that damn Manny Pacquiao.
Tagged a couple of times. Not that he got hurt or knocked down, but he got tagged.
Right.
And it ticked him off. Mm-hmm. And he got mad and he started coming full force.
Right.
Whatever he had left at 44, he was throwing at Logan Paul in the third round. And I have never seen Floyd Mayweather Jr., the greatest defensive fighter ever, not a great knockout puncher, but still a good puncher.
Right.
I've never seen him swing and miss so much, because he swung and missed with so...
Skip Bayless, there's something called range in the fight ring. You understand that? So you're going to swing and miss when you're out of range. Floyd was trying to find his range early in the fight. One of the great advantages that Floyd has always had throughout his boxing career is that 99 times out of 100, he enters the fight with the longer reach. Now, in the case of Logan Paul, I think that their reach was around the same. Logan may have had a 1-inch reach advantage over Floyd, but then when you also consider the fact that he has longer legs, he can extend his jab longer than Floyd can extend his own jab. So the only way that Floyd was really going to be able to reach a Logan Paul is to sucker him into trying to throw a haymaker, and then maybe Floyd can duck it and counter it with the right uppercut, which seemed to be the fight plan once the fight got started. But that's the reason why Floyd missed a lot of shots, especially early. If Floyd had a couple of real fights, he'd be, I won't say he'd ever be back to what he was 10 years ago, but you could look at him and say he could win a title if he really wanted to compete still. When I watched him against Logan Paul, I said to myself, if Floyd really wanted to go there, he can come back to professional boxing and win a title. He'd take a lot more damage, but if he wanted to win more titles, he could do that.
Well, the stats are tilted way in Floyd's favor, because Floyd landed 43 of only 107 punches, while Logan Paul was 28 of 217.
43 of 107 punches is somewhere around 40%, which is an excellent ratio if you understand boxing.
He threw 110 more punches than Floyd did. So he was coming. He was trying.
He wasn't coming with shit. He was throwing a whole bunch of garbage punches. He was scared to death. He was intimidated when he got into the ring. He tried to act like he wasn't nervous at all. He was nervous as hell. And he threw a whole bunch of pity-pat punches. He got frustrated in the first round and tried to cuff Floyd to death. The shit didn't work. And then he started to feel Floyd's power from the second round on. And he said, oh shit, I don't want to get embarrassed. I don't want to get knocked out. I'm just going to hold. So that's how the fight went.
He's not a bad technical boxer, or he would have gone down.
Yeah.
Because the point was...
Well, he was trained on how to basically survive the fight by using his size and by holding. So if by that you mean he's not a bad technical boxer, then I would have to agree with you. But if by technical boxer you mean he knows how to set up his opponent to counter, he knows how to set up a knockout or execute his jab properly, go to the body, things like that, maneuver in the ring, no, he's not particularly good yet. But he's working very hard, I give him that. But just as an overall athlete, you have to give him credit for being able to last that long in the ring with the Floyd. But he's supposed to. He's 18 years younger. Like, he's almost half Floyd's age. He's way bigger. He was supposed to last the entire fight. If Floyd had been able to knock out Logan Paul in this bout, Logan would have never gotten another opportunity to make money as a professional prize fighter, at least not in a real way. So that to me does lend credence to the notion that Floyd maybe, possibly, was in on an agenda or, a conspiracy to allow Logan to last for the entire fight.
Knock him out. He never even knocked him down one time.
No.
Not one time was Logan Paul what you'd say was in trouble in that fight.
Nope.
Not one.
It depends on what you're looking at. I thought that Logan was in trouble a couple of times in the fight. It's just that he knew how to survive because he was in great shape.
Bit of a mouse under one eye. He took a couple of whacks. Floyd got in the better shots.
Yeah, he hit the cleaner shots.
And I tried to score it. I know it wasn't being scored.
Skip Bayless, you don't know how to score a fight. You've proven that over and over again. You have no idea how to score a fucking fight.
Very simply, I gave Floyd 5 out of 8 rounds. So if it had counted, he would have won on points.
Right.
So Skip Bayless gave Floyd 5 out of 8 rounds. So most likely Floyd won 7 out of 8 rounds because we know if he had any reason to score the round for Logan Paul, he did.
At least on my card, I saw ESPN's card, they had it about the same.
Right.
Oh, look at that. Floyd's drinking too much water. He must have lost that round. That round's for Logan.
It was that Shannon Sharp bought this and went to watch it at a theater, and I bought this and watched it on my couch with Ernestine and Hazel, and I was ready for the silliness.
Yeah.
This fool Skip Bayless is in a 3-way marriage. He's married to that old dog-looking woman, Ernestine, and he's married to his actual dog, Hazel, allegedly.
Go down.
And we talked about this earlier, but I thought Ocho Cinco fight was more entertaining than
Yeah, we'll
this.
talk about that.
Yeah.
You could certainly argue that, but I would.
Well, Shannon Sharp, that's because you don't know shit about boxing. That's why you thought that Ocho Cinco's fight was more entertaining than Floyd Mayweather's. I mean, come on. But I'm sure that, by the way, I'm sure that there are many others who thought that Ocho Cinco's fight was more entertaining than Floyd Mayweather's fight. But when you reach such a high level of proficiency and execution, you tend to make what you do look boring. Due to your lack of weaknesses, there's very little that your opponent can do. Therefore, it appears to almost be like a cat playing with a ball of yarn. We've seen this same phenomenon when you watch a New England Patriots game when they were at their peak with Tom Brady and Belichick, or the San Antonio Spurs at their peak with Pop, Ginobili, Duncan, so on and so forth, where it's just about high-level execution and their games start to look boring. That's how Floyd's boxing matches were, because he basically had no weaknesses. So his fights were not very exciting to watch for the layman.
I wasn't entertained.
Right.
I kept waiting.
I was disappointed.
You're a Floyd fan.
I am.
I'm not. And so after a while, I'm definitely not a Logan Paul fan. I found myself rooting for Logan Paul because to just stand up. If you can stand up for 8 rounds.
Of course you find yourself rooting for Logan Paul, Skip Bayless. Stop acting like you were not rooting for him from the start. You were praying for Logan Paul to do anything against Floyd Mayweather the same way you were praying for Conor McGregor to do anything against Floyd Mayweather, the same way you were rooting like hell for Andre Berto to do anything against Floyd Mayweather. Same thing with Manny Pacquiao and every other fighter that Floyd has fought in the last 15 years since De La Hoya, which is probably the first time you ever even heard of Floyd Mayweather's when he fought De La Hoya. And from that time forward, you've been rooting against him and you've hated him with a passion. So don't act like you didn't... Don't act like you never even knew who Logan Paul was, or you were not rooting for him until the fight started. You was rooting for him from the start.
At the end of the 8th round, he's clowning Floyd.
Right.
He's making fun of him.
Skip, it's like
you can't knock me out.
Skip, it's like anything. If I'm a novice tennis player and I go out there and I take a game off of Nadal or Joker, I won.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Which you did.
Yeah, thank you, Skip.
Yes.
You the perfect.
Well, you could say that you won against Nadal or the Joker if that's what you feel like makes you more confident in yourself or what have you, but the facts will say that you lost at the end of the day. Like, you know, this thing like, hey, I played Michael Jordan one-on-one and the score was 11-1, but I scored a basket, so I feel great about myself. Really? So you're patting yourself on the back for being a relatively competitive loser? Like, come on now.
Just doing this, I'm just joking around.
This was the effectively taking a game off Nadal.
Yes.
Because he stood up the whole fight.
Right.
And Floyd was trying, doing his damnedest to at least knock him down one time, and he could not do it.
He couldn't.
Well, Floyd was trying, I would say, from rounds 2 to 6. In round 1, he just wanted to see what Logan had, and in rounds, you know, like maybe like from the second half of round 6 through round 7 and 8, he just said, you know what, we just gonna live to fight another day because I don't need to take any more damage, and plus I signed this contract under the table with Disney Incorporated to allow the kid to not get his brain scrambled. So I'm pretty much gonna leave him alone from here.
Floyd readily admitted, I'm not 21 anymore, right. And he was better than I thought.
He was, the age, Skip, and like you said, if you look at the misses. But I noticed this, Skip, against Conor, because I noticed a younger Floyd, Conor would have been out of there inside of 5 rounds. But as we start to age...
Well, Shannon Sharp, you have to ask yourself, did Floyd really fight so long and deep into the fight with Conor McGregor because he was aging? Or was it once again because it was his job to make the fight look competitive and to give the people their money's worth? In Floyd Mayweather's mind, giving people their money's worth is stretching the fight to near its end and then getting the stoppage. Like the Conor McGregor fight went perfect. This fight, I'm sure he would have loved to have gotten the stoppage, but the guy was just too damn big.
Floyd was pinpoint accurate. I mean, you look at him against Cotto. You look at him against some of the other fighters, and he didn't
never been anyone better in that regard, defensively and pinpoint accuracy.
Yes. He could roll the...
Once again, you cannot compare Floyd Mayweather's performance against a 6'2", 205-pound prime athlete to his ability to reach his opponent when they're 5'7", 5'8", 147, 155, 160 pounds. 2 different levels of combat, 2 different levels of opposition. I mean, that's why, you know, in segments like this, it would behoove the producers of these type of shows to have a third guest on so that they could provide some expertise. Because neither one of these guys know what the fuck they're talking about at all.
Right, boom.
They were sometimes powder puff kind of punches, but they landed where they were intended to land.
Right.
Last night, not so much. And Floyd didn't look right to me. I know he's grown the beard, but it made his face look fat, which was shocking to me.
Floyd's face didn't look fat at all. As a matter of fact, for a 44-year-old cat, the brother looked way younger than his age. So it's obvious that Floyd has stayed away from the drugs. He stayed away from the hard alcohol. So good for him. He's also stayed away from the crazy bitches. And when Floyd does interact with these women, he understands women much better now. So he doesn't get caught up in their shenanigans and their hijinks. He does not allow females to pull him down their own personal rabbit holes anymore like he did when he was younger.
Difference between being in fighting shape and saying, okay, I'm in shape. Floyd's in great shape to be a 44-year-old man. He's in really good shape.
Oh, yes, I agree.
But he's not in 44, he's not in boxing shape. That's a whole different type of shape.
Because he used to...
Let me ask you a question, Shannon Sharp. Over the course of those 8 rounds, when Floyd Mayweather had a 200-pound man hanging on to him and trying to hit him with hard punches, did it appear that Floyd was out of breath at any time in the fight? He was in boxing shape. He just was not in professional championship level Floyd Mayweather boxing shape. So let's make that distinction very quickly.
What
he said, and he weighed in
155.
155 2 days. Was it 2 days ago?
Yes.
Yeah. And the point was, he probably went and ate. He might have fought at 160 something, right? Because he looked like, and he was a little pudgy around his waistline than usual. Usually, he's almost too skinny. You know, like he was. You want to talk about.
Well, Skip Bayless, that's how you know that he's not on any PEDs. Because when you get on PEDs, you can put on all that lean muscle mass and the fat does not show around your midriff. When you do things naturally, you're going to have that little paunch around your midriff, even if you're in better condition. So it's obvious that Floyd wanted a little bit more meat on his bones heading into this fight, knowing that the guy was going to try to use his brute force against him. So that's what that was about.
Yes, but you look at Jake Paul, and I'm watching Jake Paul in the ring. Jake Paul, he weighed at 189. Yeah. He probably walked in the ring 195, maybe even 200.
No doubt. And as Floyd said afterwards, he knew how to use his weight against Floyd because he was so much bigger. And remember, he's 6 inches taller, so he's a lot longer. And he could sort of suffocate Floyd with his height and his reach. Not that he has long arm span, but he's just so much bigger. And it was hard for Floyd because it's too much tonnage to fight through.
When somebody that much bigger than you lean on you, Floyd would try to hit him with an uppercut. But you hit him in his chest. Where normally you hit, he throwing that.
Shannon Sharp, did you watch the fight? Or you just talking shit, brother? Like, come on. I'm not going to say that Floyd was pinpoint accurate with every shot, but he was able to land that right uppercut on Logan Paul's chin repeatedly throughout the fight. He had no real problems landing on Logan Paul other than initiating the exchanges because, once again, there was a reach disadvantage that he had and just a physical proportion disadvantage that he had. But it wasn't as big a deal as these two fools are trying to make it out to be.
Chin shot.
Yep.
Remember, he caught Carter with that shot in the clit. Boom. Well, this dude, that's a big man. Logan Paul's a big man, Skip, and he has some technique. Now, if he were to get in the ring with Bud Thurman, he get in the ring with somebody that's active now. Oh, they get him out of there in a couple of rounds. But that's a different ball game when Floyd is just exhibition. Floyd is just mainly hitting the heavy bag. Floyd's not sparring anymore, Skip. Yep. He's on the speed bag. He's on the heavy bag. He's doing jump rope. That's a whole different ball, a whole different animal than actually fighting.
So because I do have so much respect for Floyd as a boxer, that was embarrassing for him. That just, for me, it hurt my eyes to watch it. I'm going to have a hard time getting it.
Sound like you're giving him a fake compliment. I have so much respect for Floyd as a boxer, you embarrassed for him. Like, you're acting like this was Floyd's version of Ali against Larry Holmes or some shit. This was not an embarrassment at all. I'm not even quite sure if Floyd is capable of embarrassing himself. His level of craft is so high, and his conditioning is normally on point whenever he chooses to step in the ring. Like, he never gets in there and totally embarrasses himself from lack of conditioning. I would say that the closest we ever saw to that was that fight that he had over in Japan against that kickboxer Tenzin, whatever the fuck his name was, where it looked like Floyd just trained for a week and got in there and just dog walked the dude. Floyd Mayweather should never be allowed to get into the ring with someone smaller than him. Like, that's number one. There's nowhere in the world that Floyd Mayweather should ever be allowed or sanctioned to fight someone smaller than him. It's barely a fair fight to allow him to fight someone 200 pounds. But if he's in there with someone smaller than him, I mean, come on, man. That's like animal cruelty.
Because it might be the last I ever see of Floyd in any kind of quote-unquote fight.
Right.
Because I would recommend to him that was not worth it.
Yeah, let it.
I know, he's made
20, 30
about, hey, if Conor wants a rematch and they'll give me $100 million, maybe I'd do it. I just don't want to see it anymore.
No.
I want to try to hang on to my memory of...
Right, but if you don't want to see it anymore, who the hell's making you watch the shit? Ain't nobody tying your hands behind your back and saying, hey, press this button on the remote and purchase the fight. What you're really saying is that you're upset that you watched Floyd for the last 15 years, that you were aware of him as a fighter, and you never got to see him lose. And that's what you're mad about, Skip Bayless. You're 70 years old, and you said, I'm going to drop dead in another decade or so, and I'm going to go to my grave knowing that Floyd Mayweather never caught a real loss in the ring. That's what you're mad about.
Going back to all those Cotto fights and all, because you want to talk about a wizard. Woo. You want to talk about gifted? You want to talk about the ability to duck punches, to avoid punches? There's never been anything like him before. Even the great Sugar Ray Leonard wasn't quite in full class.
The only guy that had defense at that size like him was Sweet Pea Whitaker.
Yeah.
But Sweet Pea's offense wasn't like his. That's what made...
And Sweet Pea Whitaker's defense was more about elusivity. Not so much about what Floyd Mayweather does, which basically comprises all of the facets of defense. Blocking, weaving, ducking, as well as just being overall elusive. But he blocks as many punches as he eludes, but he also can do that. Like, his level of defense is about a level or so above Sweet Pea's, but I'm sure that there are some cats out there who would disagree. That's fine. But Floyd was a better all-around boxer than Sweet Pea Whitaker, and of course didn't have the vices that Sweet Pea had.
He had the defense of Sweet Pea, but he had an offensive arsenal that was unrivaled. Guys had offense, the Kings. When you talk about Leonard, Durant, Hearns, all those Hagler, Skip, they had offensive firepower.
Shannon must have watched the documentary. For those of you brothers who don't get the opportunity, you should check it out. I might do a review of all 4 parts on this second Patreon channel, because it was exemplary. It was extremely extraordinary. The job that they did on that 4-part documentary on the quote-unquote 4 Kings. Very well done.
And that's why you see, you look, Tommy Hearns, they have to use subtitles. All these guys, Floyd still is able to go around and function because he didn't take those punches because of his defensive skill set.
I know it was a long time ago, but do you remember what Floyd did to Canelo?
Yeah.
I know it's forever
yes,
ago.
He drug him.
And
Yes.
Canelo was a baby, but you want to talk about taking somebody to school?
Yes.
Skip, I mean, it was a miss.
In boxing, 23 years old is not a baby. I think that Canelo has gotten better as a fighter because he's matured as a fighter. He's matured into his man body. But when you look at the history of boxing, most all-time great fighters are at their best at 23 years of age. Now, every once in a while, you have these anomalies who peak in their mid to late 30s, like a Bernard Hopkins or an Archie Moore. But for the most part, of all the great elite level fighters, the best that you're ever going to see from them is at around the age of 22, 23. Whether it be Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, Floyd Mayweather, Roy Jones, they were at their peak at 22, 23 years old when it came to execution. So this notion that the reason why Floyd dog-walked Canelo is because he was young, that's just nonsense. He gave him a lesson. The fighter that Canelo Alvarez is right now is based on the studying of Floyd Mayweather fights that he clearly has underwent since that ass whooping that he took. And he was studying Floyd even before he took the ass whooping. So Canelo is a product of Floyd Mayweather. Canelo is Floyd Mayweather's boxing son.
People don't realize, Skip, that early on Floyd started out at 130. Floyd was knocking people out until his hands got bad.
Yeah,
he beat everybody. He beat Cotto, Medina, Hatton, got it, you name it. He didn't duck anybody. And they like, well, Floyd, no. He didn't duck anybody. You go back and look at Floyd.
Still not sure he fought anybody of note when he caught them at their...
The media never started to call Floyd Mayweather a ducker until he left Bob Arum. And that's what I mean when I speak about how the media is used to craft the overall consciousness of the masses, whether it be about how they view a particular politician, how they view a notable figure, how they view entire groups of people, how they view athletes. The media never claimed that Floyd Mayweather ducked fighters until he left Bob Arum. And because Bob Arum was so plugged in with HBO, that emboldened people like Jim Lampley and Larry Merchant to start to spread propaganda about Floyd Mayweather, who fought more champions after he left Bob than in all the years fighting for Bob. And also this nonsense about Floyd not fighting fighters in their prime. I mean, you fight guys when you fight them. If they have the belt, they have the belt. Floyd Mayweather's aging himself. He can't keep his aging process in stasis while everybody else is getting older. He's not a vampire. So this concept of, well, he waited for guys to get old. There's not one fighter who Floyd Mayweather has ever waited to get old. He tried to fight Manny Pacquiao back in 2009. He said, all you have to do is, agree to the fully random blood and urine testing to make sure that you have no PEDs. Manny Pacquiao said, no, I'm scared of needles. This is a fact. Floyd also said, we'll split it 50-50, which he didn't have to do. It ended up working out better for both fighters because they broke the bank on a totally different level that had never been seen before. No, Floyd Mayweather wanted to fight Oscar De La Hoya from the damn early 2000s, but Oscar was too big a fish. He was trying to fight Shane Mosley from 1999, but Shane Mosley was jumping weight classes chasing after De La Hoya. These are just facts. So, when people say that nonsense about how Floyd waits for guys to get old, I already know they have no idea what they're talking about. Floyd tried to fight Cotto at 140. Bob Arum said, no, I'm not going to feed you Miguel Cotto. I have plans for him. Plus, I have him as my guy over the Puerto Rican market. Floyd was trying to fight Miguel Cotto in 2005. He was trying to fight Ricky Hatton in 2005. Didn't get either fight because both of those fighters were being protected.
Like that, Skip. He just made him look bad. He made him look bad.
Yeah.
Now Canelo, now you realize just how special it was. Because Canelo has gone up in weight. Canelo's 168 now. So now obviously that's off the table.
Yeah.
And now Canelo looks unbeatable.
He does.
But he picked.
Canelo looks unbeatable, number one, because he's a great fighter, but also because they match him appropriately. What Canelo's been able to do is meld the quote-unquote Mexican fighting style of hard punching and that those rugged displays of machismo with the black fighting style, the head movement, the upper body movement, rolling with punches, swaying punches, counter punching, things like that. Like, he's combined it, the so-called shoulder roll with also the Mexican fighting style. So he looks like he's unbeatable, but they match him appropriately. They know that they can't have him fighting too many black fighters, and to Canelo's credit, he's never ran from the black fighting style. He's gotten into the ring with Danny Jacobs. He fought Floyd Mayweather. He fought Austin Trout. Right? He fought Lara. So he deserves a lot of credit for that. But there are some other fighters that he should be getting into the ring with. Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade. He had the nerve to sit there at the press conference and say that Boo Boo was not a good fighter. He knows damn well that Boo Boo is a good fighter. What he knows is that Boo Boo is going to give him everything that he can ask for, because Demetrius has the head movement, he has the foot movement, and he's a great counter puncher. Now, will he have the power to keep Canelo off of him? Will he have the chin to sustain Canelo's attacks? That's a whole other story. But I don't want to see Canelo in the ring with too many more European belt holders. We already know how that's going to go. Those guys don't have the rhythm, the footwork, the speed, or the stamina to stay away from Canelo Alvarez or counter him with anything of substance. So, I mean, Canelo's going to have to step it up pretty soon.
Wow.
Well, I, for one, how much was it? $49.95.
Yeah.
I didn't mind spending my $49.95.
When I spent it for two reasons. I wanted to see Ocho.
Yeah.
Well, Skip Bayless, make up your mind. Was it $49.95 a waste of money, or you didn't mind spending it? The fact of the matter is, you're a hater. You love Floyd. You're a Floyd fan, Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless likes all the guys. He's like that crazy dude who gets turned on when women turn him down. He just keeps asking them out. That's Skip Bayless. He loves Floyd and LeBron because they just keep ignoring him and making their money. Skip is like, oh, I'm so turned on. These guys, they know how to resist my hate.
We're going to talk about our show in a little bit, because that was sort of the highlight of the night. Although I did get a kick out of seeing Floyd have to labor all through 8 3-minute rounds just to get through it.
He's never had a man that size lean on him for 8 rounds, Skip. That's a lot to hold him up.
Yeah.
So, okay, you paid
Floyd,
for it.
Give it a rest.
We're talking, whether or not it was embarrassing, they're looking at $100 million, right? For Floyd, possibly 20.
And that's all that matters, Jenny Taft. At the end of the day, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. Who gives a shit about the advice that people like Shannon Sharp and Skip Bayless are providing for Floyd Mayweather? Floyd Mayweather is a boss. Shannon Sharp has never been and will never be a boss. He is an employee through and through. Ask Jenny Taft. I promise you, if Floyd Mayweather came by the studio and said, Jenny Taft, you looking pretty good, do you have a man? She would think about it for a minute before she acknowledged that she had a husband. Because that's how women operate. They're totally carnal for the most part. But anyway, I enjoyed the event. I thought that Floyd looked great for someone who had been basically inactive for a very long period of time. I liked his conditioning. I also liked his approach. He can't help it if someone who outweighs him by 50 pounds wants to hold for the whole damn fight. It's a piece.